we're with Joyclynn Costa, the mighty Joyclynn Costa, from the island of Maui. Joyclynn, just was thinking today about your father, who's just so dear, and often we hear him at the various meetings recounting his stories and saying, I'm not afraid to go to jail, you know. I've been in jail before. Or talking about making his beautiful throw nets and fishing. But the one thing that I keep hearing him say, and I've heard you say, is, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. And I wonder if you might share with us the story of what that means.
Well, when we talk about my dad, we're talking about someone who is in his 70s, mid-70s, and his entire life was spent thinking that he was a good citizen of the state of Hawaii. He served his country in the Marines. He raised his family on an honest day wages. He was a carpenter by trade. A family man and fisherman by love, and that's part of his life is what is the most that's yearning to him now in his senior years, because I'd say maybe about 5 years ago he learned that his identity was really stolen from him, and it became more evident as to where he comes from, which is on the east end of Maui, called Nahiku. It's about center of Ke'anai and Hana, and it sits right on the main water source, which is called Makapipi. And from when he was a child, he's always visited that place. He heard that's where his mother was born, that's where his grandfather was born, that's where his great-grandmother was born. And that's where he yearned to spend the last days that he had here on earth. But because of society, it moved him out to the city to raise his family, to earn a living. But now that he's learned his new identity, well, actually his identity, which is a subject of the Kingdom of Hawaii, he ends up with more questions now instead of conclusions and closed chapters. Now he's got all these chapters opening up for him, and he finds himself now yearning to go back to Nahiku, but there's gates, there's locks that confront him. And
who do these locks belong to?
I want to say people who are also victims of this society, because sometimes, you know, although it angers you, you have to really stop and look at the whole picture. And when people start buying up real estate in Hawaii, they truly believe that they paid for something, and so now it's theirs. And I think this person is the same way. I want to give him that. And so I'm hoping that when the truth comes out, then he'll have a better understanding as to who we are and our place there. It's a 56 acre undivided area, and he has some type of controlling interest of 10 acres. But within the 10 acres, the only access to the area is controlled by his lock. So my father, now that he's learned who he is and the rights that come with it, he said, well, this lock is not going to stop me anymore. You know, I'm in my senior years. I still throw my net. And I'll be damned if I'm going to be climbing over this fence, walking through a pasture to go cast my net, carry all of my ukana back up through this pasture, hop over this fence to get to my car and go home. So he decided that so that it doesn't disturb the purpose of the gate, he cuts the link off the chain, applies his own lock, so now he has access without disturbing the purpose of that chain. go in, drive in, get down to the beach, do what is necessary for him, and then drive home. Well, that wasn't good enough. And so this man decided he was going to take it upon himself to charge my father with criminal trespass and criminal property damage for taking a link off of his chain. And so now we're going to go to court. And my father said, it's good. It's necessary because while I still have breath in my body, I need to make sure that I secure the access for my children. And this seems to be his driving force. This is like his main purpose now. For him, it's of no matter. What he's concerned about is making sure that his children and their children will be able to go back to the lands that his mother was born, his grandfather was born, his great-grandmother was born, and so on and so on.
So how does that feel to you? What does that feel like to you?
Oh, I'm so proud of him. I'm proud of him, you know. And I only hope that I stay that grounded. I think I'm going to need to walk around a little bit more without shoes to widen my feet so I can fit those shoes once he leaves it behind for me. But when we went down there with him, because we all stood together as a family, my children went, the grandchildren went, and we stood there. And the officers came, and they didn't pay us no mind. You know, they just did their thing, and then they left. But what we were doing was cleaning out one of the heiaus down there. And it's a fishing heiau, and it's got also an extended area where they would park the canoes. They have a mahale for the canoes as well. And you know, there's a lot of stories down there. Nahiko is a really sacred place. I don't know all of the history. I'm still learning it. But one thing I learned was that it had 7 sacred heiaus. There's a lot of heiaus in there, but there's 7 main heiaus down there. And I truly believe one of the heiaus is the one we were cleaning. It was actually a dual heiau. And when one of the elders passed away, some of the community took it upon themselves to take a bulldozer and knock one down. But this one is still standing. But there's several main heiaus within Nahiko. And I've had kupuna come in there from Hana and other places on Maui, and when they arrive into Nahiko, you know, they feel that there's something about this place. And not anybody can go to Nahiko. And when I say that, you'll know, because when you enter Nahiko, if it likes you, it likes you. If it doesn't, it lets you know. Sometimes in a subtle way, sometimes it's a little bit more abrupt. I've had friends come in and then end up the waves hit them and knock them on the rocks, or you know, and they get all cut up, and then they say, I can't come here no more. You know, but it lets you know where you can and cannot go. And it even did that to my children, where they would go on a certain path to go to the ponds that they're familiar with, but just so happened, I guess, that day they shouldn't have gone to the pond. And no matter how they backtracked, they could not find that trail to get to the pond that day. and they tell this story to me constantly. And it amazes me because that place has a lot of trails, but we were never worried when the children went. They could go, you know. We felt confident that the kupuna watched them. And so this is why we call it home. It's some place where your children can go and you won't have to worry because they're going to come back to you. And, you know, whether it be in the river, whether it be down in the ocean, whether it be up in the forest. I traveled those trails when I was young. My children traveled those trails. My grandchildren, however, it becomes a little bit more difficult because there's newcomers coming in with keep out, no trespass, private driveway, gates and locks, and so the access is a little bit more difficult. And yet, you know, this so-called system says that those rights are protected by them, and I just can't reach that protection yet.
So in this particular place where your father was had to cut the lock to go to his own part of where he grew up. Is it possible that this gentleman can control that piece of property?
Yes and no. I say yes, because that's what he's doing. We can't control what other people do. But no to the fact that he can't control what we do. So, and I always, when I sit with my dad and he starts to get a little frustrated, I say, Dad, we cannot control what other people do, but you know what? We are in total control of what we do. So although he may think he can, and although he appears to be in control, it does not prevent us from exercising our rights, which is what my father did that day. And so it's important for him to take this next step to secure the access for our family. And I stand behind him 100%. You're right. He got arrested once before, and he wasn't even on his kuleana, and it didn't matter because he was doing kokua, for kuleana, and that's just as much a right as being where you're supposed to be.
I think this is a really important case because I know of other families where people have claimed to have bought pieces of land around their property, their kuleana property, and have left them landlocked. And I think this is really important because I don't think that it's possible that you could have been landlocked.
Well, the thing is, this landlocked that you're talking about, that's what this gentleman is. He got himself onto a property that had no access. So this particular road that is gated now with a lock had been in existence for the family for as long as I was a child, and my dad growing up.
It's an old trail.
It's an old dirt trail, or at one time they had donkeys there, and I believe they would take the jeeps down there. The military, I believe, went down there because then they have the GPS plates down there. It was dated like 1950 something, and but because that was the only access, he found it a nuisance that people would travel down there to get down to the beach, and he didn't want anyone passing his house. There's one house in there, and he was afraid that someone might come in, because he's not there all the time, come in and vandalize his house. So he locked down the whole 56 acres, and I don't stop anybody from their liberties and their pursuit of happiness. I just don't like it when they infringe and encroach on mine.
Right.
And my dad in his 70s deserves to be comfortable and access the property that he has from back in the 40s. To have someone come along in just a matter of a few years in the lifetime of his children and say, now you can't go down there anymore, is ludicrous. And I think when the truth starts to come out, I'm hoping that we have a relationship with this person, and because we have to start to diminish the anger, to diminish the hate, to diminish all of that ill will, so that we can teach him that it doesn't necessarily have to be where you gotta lock yourself in someplace.
Right.
You gotta kind of pray for a person like that. If you put out anger and revenge, to me, that's what's gonna come back.
Right.
Although my dad doesn't see it that way. This man is deserving of whatever's going to be coming, but I try to counter it with a little bit of compassion, because that's what I'm hoping for him.
And a lot of education, right?
A lot of education. My dad said, though, with all the education that you get, there's one thing that's missing in the schools, and that is the class of common sense. The class of common sense. If this man understands that your preventing a 74-year-old man from accessing his beach rights and imposing on him to walk all the way across. I'm not talking the short distance. You're talking the width of that property, of this 56 acres. So it's quite a hike to get to the ocean and back. And he did it for, as long as I can remember that the lock was up. In my childhood, there was no lock. There were gates because they have cattle in there. And then within my adult life, the locks went up. And my dad would fight him tooth and nail, and then he just got tired of fighting. But that's because he didn't know who he was. Like I said, he had that stolen identity. But now that he knows who he is and that the rights from the kingdom is still solid for him, this is why he's not afraid to cut that link on the chain and create his own access, and without encumbering his private property, the gate and the lock and the chain. He's just creating his own access so that he can exercise his rights that he never gave away, he never lost. And everybody should know that.
So if other people are in this situation like you, like your family, would you be willing to speak to them?
Oh, absolutely. We started to form this organization called HUI PONO IKE KANAWAI. And we were getting tired of watching people getting, pretty much knocked out in the court system. Quiet title, trespass, gathering rights. We don't have gathering rights, You have bag limits. You have just regulation after regulation telling us what kind of fish, when we can catch, what size fish, how many fish. And we just said, okay, if we have rights, where is it? So we found ourselves in the library. First we went to the Kahului library. Then we ended up in the law library at the courthouse.
And when you say we, who are you speaking of?
Oh, well, it first started out, I just sit in the library. And then I had a girlfriend of mine, which I didn't know she was going to be my girlfriend. She was just someone to say, "Hi, I'd like to know what you're doing." And I told her, and she said, I want to kind of join you and do this. And I said, okay. And so now we're like joining on the hip. And then her husband, this is Johanna, and then her husband said, hey, where's my wife going off every time? So he joined us in the library, the law library, and then he got kind of curious, although he didn't want to read. He just wanted to listen to the discussion. But then he felt, okay, in order to get into this discussion, I got to read. And then he got hooked on reading the different cases, and he found out, hey, I have rights. The unusual part about the Kamaunus is that they live on Kuleana lands. So everything pertained to them. Everything that they read, all of the rights that they were learning pertained to them. And so it strengthened them. And then we had Wilmot. His first name is Kamaunu. Well, his Hawaiian name is Kamaunu. It's funny that he ended up with that name, and this couple's last name is Kamaunu. And there's also another gal from Lahainai, which is Lanakila. And so we have study group. We have time for debate. We don't always agree. And then we also give free workshops. And what we do is we share the knowledge that we've been gifted through the studies and the readings that we've had in the law library. So it's been a blessing. It's been through, to me, divine intervention that we've come together as a group and been gifted the information and knowledge that we can share with everybody.
Before you share that, tell them what the website is that they can come to. They can find you and find out information about the next meetings and how to contact this group.
There is one on Facebook. I guess you can get into Facebook and you can look up HUI PONO IKE KANAWAI. And we love to have
say
information.
Again really slowly so someone can write that down.
It would be HUI PONO IKE KANAWAI. And all it is a right way of understanding the laws of the Hawaiian Kingdom. The Kanawai. It was so pure because what we found was Today, the laws are kind of fashioned to government. Back then, the laws were fashioned for the people. And the laws were only necessary where there was what they call a mischief. So, then we got into the readings of the cases and how they were so fair. The judgments back then was so fair. I mean, it didn't matter if you were a subject of the kingdom or a foreigner. Wrong was wrong, right was right. There was no prejudice. There was no prejudice. Justice was actually blind back then. She didn't look at you for how she wanted to see you. She looked at you because this is what the law is. And it was evident in the cases that we read. It's a beautiful, I encourage any and everybody to, go into the older cases, the 1800 cases, and read. You'll find amazing information. You'll find maps in there. You'll find genealogy in there. You'll find how our water rights work in there. How the land is divided. Whose testimony was more credible? A surveyor or a native? In fact, one of the cases we read, they took native testimony and he said, I don't think you can use my testimony in this case. And the person said, how come? He says, because my information comes from a surveyor. It's that kind of humor. It's good reading. It really is. It's like a novel, but it's true. So a lot of our information comes from that. And then, we also delve into the HRS because it actually is the kingdom law. It's a revised version of the original Kanawai.
So if people want to find out more about how to start to delve into our laws that are actually the ones that are pertaining to this place that we live in, Hawaii, that they can contact you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, on Facebook, and I believe Kaniloa has set up, the telephone number is 214-9665.
Beautiful.
Keep Hawaiian lands in Hawaiian hands, yeah. Keep Hawaiian lands in Hawaiian hands, yeah. On the road we go, far from life we stroll. It's an uphill climb, yeah. Stays with you